Today's show is brought to you by Audible. Audible is offering our listeners a free audiobook with a 30-day trial membership. If you've never been an Audible customer and want to see what they offer, just go to www.audibletrial.com/Excelsior Journeys and browse the unmatched selection of audio programs. Download a title for free and start listening. It's that easy. Why Audible? Audible content includes an unmatched selection of audiobooks, original audio shows, news, comedy, and more from the leading audiobook publishers, broadcasters, and entertainers. And with this free 30-day trial, you'll have your pick of it all. You can hear books of all genres narrated by Jim Dale, Stephen Fry, Will Patton, Alex Hyde White, Jeff Brick, Neil Shaw, William Demerit, and even a few by me, George Sirois. So go to www.audibletrial.com/Excelsior Journeys and start your own 30-day journey with Audible today.
Hey, this is John Lee Dumas of the award-winning podcast Entrepreneurs on Fire, and you're listening to the Excelsior Journeys with George Sirois. Prepare to ignite.
Is there a burning desire within to share your creativity with the rest of the world? Do you insist on pursuing your passion by any means necessary? Then you are on an Excelsior journey, and you are not alone.
Welcome back to Excelsior Journeys. My name is George Sirois. Thank you so much for being here today, and I hope you're going to have as much fun as I will chatting with our new guest. Now, before I go ahead and introduce her, let me go ahead and just do a quick bit of house cleaning over here. On February 27th, which is a Wednesday, I am going to be at Clayton Studios in St. Louis on Big Bend Boulevard, and I will be leading a seminar. It starts at 6:30 p.m., so if you're working, you can just go ahead and head over there right afterwards. And I'll be leading a 2-hour seminar that is all about the A to Z of podcasting. Not only do I have experience doing this show, but I also have extensive experience being a part of Right Pack Radio, which is a great St. Louis-based roundtable discussion every week, talking with different writers and different great creative people. And I have also participated in the 411 Mania Movie Zone podcast years back. So definitely have the experience and looking forward to sharing not only my experience, but also a lot of different tips of the trade with all of you. And so if you'd like to join us, again, it's on Wednesday, February 27th at Clayton Studios on Big Bend Boulevard. Please contact Clayton Studios for more information. Now, I'm going to take you guys back in time even further than I have done in recent times, with the exception of Mark Fratto when we went all the way back to elementary school. But I'm going to take you back over to high school. And just like during the time when I was chatting with Brandy Stewart, who was my guest from a few weeks ago, I will reiterate that during 9th grade, 10th grade, it was, you can say, a dark time for the rebellion. I was undergoing quite a bit of stage fright that I had developed during right at the end of 6th grade, which was my last year in Poughkeepsie, New York, before my mother, my sister, and I moved to Richmond, Virginia. And during that time, my confidence was pretty much shot to hell, and I was just not happy about how things were going in my life. But thankfully, one man really came to the rescue. His name is Mac Damron, but I will always forever refer to him as Mr. Damron. And he is the drama teacher at Millsy Godwin High School in Richmond, Virginia. When I was in 10th grade, I took Drama 1 and then would continue to take his classes, Drama 2 and Drama 3, for the rest of high school. And I noticed something as soon as I really kind of hit my stride in that class. I felt like I was realizing who I really was, who I was here to be. I have always considered myself since then as a storyteller in some way, shape, or form, either performing others or telling my own through my books, which you can get online, Excelsior, Ever Upward, and the 5-part serial From Parts Unknown. None of what I have done since high school would not have been possible if I had not gone through Mr. Damron's drama class. And this, I can safely say that that's the same thing that I can say for every other student that he has had, especially during that 3-year period that I really got to know him and become friends with so many great people who are still friends today. And one of the great things about that class that I will always hold on to and will always be grateful to is that class basically allowed me to open up and have the confidence in myself to become who I am. And what it didn't have to be just on the stage. Now, granted, I did move on to Marymount Manhattan College. I took theater arts. I graduated with a degree in theater arts. I'm very proud of that. I've done some great productions on the stage at Marymount Manhattan College, but that would not have been possible if Mr. Damron did not have the confidence in me to give me 3 roles during my senior year in the play Greater Tuna, with one of those roles being a lead, one of the 2 leads in that show. So I can definitely go on and on and on about how it's helped me, but I can also say that it helped everyone else in that class become who they are. Now, not everyone went on to the stage and stayed on the stage. There are people that have been able to tap into their creative juices in other ways, whether it's music, whether it's television, whether it's film, whether it's becoming a filmmaker. And in the case of my guest here today, becoming an artist. And I am so thrilled to have a very old friend from that time. She and I go back over 25 years. So I'm not, I'm not purposely dating ourselves, but at the same time, it just gotta, embrace that. But I will just give you a quick breakdown of what Elizabeth Meggs has been up to ever since she finished her time at Godwin High School. She went on to attend VCU, Virginia Commonwealth University, on a full scholarship. She graduated summa cum laude with a BFA in Communication, Arts, and Design. And she also got her master's degree with distinction in painting from Pratt Institute. Okay. She was inducted into the Visual Lunacy Society in 2004. She has gone on to become a graphic designer at Hearst Victoria magazine. She's been a writer at the Los Angeles Daily News. She has been a faculty member at VCU, at Pratt Institute, at the New York College of Technology. She has gone on to have her work shown at Lincoln Center in Chelsea and Los Angeles. So many great things, so many wonderful things. And she even has her own writing out there, including Practice Makes Perfect, a graphic design student's guide to freelance. She has done so much, and I am so thrilled that she has had the time to sit down with us and share her journey with us, because she's just getting started. With everything that she's got going on right now, the sky is the limit for her. I am so proud to be her friend, and I'm so thrilled to have her here. Ladies and gentlemen, Elizabeth Meggs. Elizabeth, how are you?
Hi, George. I'm so happy to be talking to you about our
long.
Excelsior Journeys.
Yes.
Yes, we go back 300 years. No, I'm just kidding.
Yeah. It kind of feels like that at times, but it was really just terrific, and you've been nothing but a gem to me, like, the whole time that we've known each other, and I always appreciated that. And now, now here we are, we have this moment. So,
well, I have to say you're sort of singing my praises right now, but I have to say I'm so proud of you for writing your books, Excelsior 1 and 2, and From Parts Unknown. And now you have more coming out soon, more in the works. It's very inspiring to me, just how hard you're working and all that you've done so far. So really exciting to hear that you've pursued so much. And that you have the podcast too. Yay.
Oh yeah. And this is going to be really interesting because what's great is that since you were a fellow student during that time in Mr. Damron's class, you kind of got to see firsthand the very, very rough original sketches and writings and everything that would eventually become Excelsior.
And I saw George Sirois in the raw material before you. Yes.
Before I figured out what I was doing. Yeah. Because during that time, it's fun. Like during that time, I was doing what you can basically call reverse fan fiction. Because, normally with fan fiction, you're taking established characters and you're dropping them into new situations. What I was doing was taking new characters and dropping them into established situations. I was ripping off from everything that I had laid my eyes on. I was grabbing stuff from the Star Wars trilogy at the time. The 87 Masters of the Universe movie was a huge inspiration for me in its own interesting way. Just grabbing stuff from Transformers and all this great stuff and everything. I was
going to say, did you watch Transformers and
yes.
Voltron and all of that? I did too, because I had an older brother.
Oh yeah, I was a child of the '80s, so yeah, that was my jam. That was
Transformers.
Oh yeah, and I remember being 10 years old, seeing going to the Transformers the movie with my uncle and being somewhat traumatized by Optimus Prime dying. I wasn't the kid
when he died. That was a big moment. It was when Optimus Prime died. I couldn't believe it. I was shocked.
I was not the kid, contrary to popular belief, I was not the kid who hid in his room for 2 weeks after that happened, which is a true story. That's something that the writer Flynn Dilley has spoken about before. I was not him. And I actually, I'm of the minority when I say that I would have loved to see Rodimus Prime actually continue to grow as the leader before Optimus Prime came in and basically gave him the Jay Leno treatment, and basically kind of swipe the rug out from under him and saying like, okay, I'm back, I'm ready to take command now. You can go back to being Hot Rod and go hang out with the other Target Masters.
Well, and I think on a bigger scale, like our childhood in the 1980s, I feel really lucky that we were born sort of just as the digital revolution was picking up. And so I had an analog childhood. I remember turning the knob on the television set and things like that. And so I think just to see the digital revolution happen, see all the wild innovations, get into kinetic media and cable television and music videos and video games, early video games, just wild. I think it was thrilling to grow up during that time.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. Do you know what today is? Today's February 7th. I just heard it's Charles Dickens' birthday.
No kidding. That's amazing. That is amazing. Happy birthday, Charles.
I know. Well, the reason I mention it is I found out recently that Washington Irving had a grumpy older brother named Ebenezer. Washington Irving, who wrote Sleepy Hollow and all of his great American literature, he had a real grumpy older brother named Ebenezer, and I read and found out that Charles Dickens had actually visited Washington Irving and Ebenezer Irving well ahead of writing A Christmas Carol. So
awesome. Just
a literary anecdote. The original Scrooge, perhaps, Ebenezer Irving. So the name Ebenezer Irving, I think, needs to make a comeback.
I think so.
If you have a son, consider Ebenezer.
I'm good with Scarlett right now with my daughter. We're not thinking getting her any siblings anytime soon. It was enough of a drama just to kind of get Scarlett to where she is right now. So anyway, so let's get back to you now. Let's
go back to Mr. Damron and drama too.
Yeah, because what I really love to know from my guests is I love hearing about that lightning bolt moment, because we all have one. We all have that we all see something or something just kind of sparks in us that makes us point toward the journey that we're about to go on and say, that's where I want to go. That's what I want to do. And so what
The
I'm really curious about,
lightning bolt moment
yeah,
where
oh
you're
yeah.
struck
So
by lightning. I'm curious to know what your lightning bolt moment was.
for me, it was really, really, it was seeing Star Wars. You know that
Okay.
if I had to pinpoint anything, it would be that, because I just became just a full, not only a full on fan, you know, like that kind of goes without saying, but just um, I felt like I became like a student of it. I wanted to learn so much about it, seeing like where George Lucas came up with this and the sort of impact that he had. You know, like I would love to have some, you know, a similar type of impact with my writing, and which
Hmm.
is a big reason why the first Excelsior is, you know, it you know, really holds tightly to the hero's journey template that Joseph Campbell came up with. And that's something that, you know, George Lucas was a student of Joseph Campbell. And so he was able to, you know, like work with Joseph and see, like, am I doing this right? Am I getting all of this right? And the fact that he was able to get so much of it right, that really kind of allowed me to just kind of tap into not only Joseph Campbell's writing, but also with all of the different people that were inspired by him. And, you know, when people say that, you know, the first Excelsior book is so cliched, like, well, of course, it's a template of the hero's journey. That's, you know, it's a cliche because it works. That's the way I look at it. And I always wanted to do, and I'm so glad that I had the opportunity to do that with that first Excelsior book. And now I get to, you know, now that Ever Upward is out, and I'm so proud of that one. I consider that one a better book than the first Excelsior. Now I can focus on Greater Glory to wrap up that trilogy and move on to other things.
Well, I'm interested to hear, and we can talk more in a bit about criticism and how you handle criticism sometimes when it's harsh, or if someone says this is cliche. I think that's something every artist or creative person has to deal with if they keep working. So,
Yeah.
in terms of my lightning bolt moment, I don't know that there really was one lightning bolt moment for me. I always, as a child, grew up coloring and painting as a child, as most children do. Most children stop coloring at a certain point, which is really sad. And most people, when they're children, love to color, pull out the Crayolas. But I never really stopped. So the reason I never really stopped, was because I was fortunate to grow up with extremely encouraging and supportive parents. So my dad, Philip B. Meggs, and my mom, Libby Phillips Meggs, they met in art school. So lucky me to like art. I was surrounded by art making growing up. So I would say being creative, making art, it's always been an essential part of being alive. So it's like eating lunch, sleeping, reading. When I have spans of time when I'm kept from working or making artwork, everything feels off. I feel terrible. So I have to do it. I'm happiest when I'm working on something creative. That's the best thing. My favorite part of being alive is when I'm really involved in the zone, with creative work, whatever it may be. In terms of what made me take the big leap and quite seriously pursue painting, it would have to be a number of pretty challenging, sad, tragic experiences that I had in my early 20s. So I had a part-time job in a building that was destroyed on September 11th. So experiencing September 11th, a friend of mine, actually you and I were in high school with, she was in the art club with me. She died that day, Alicia Burton.
Really?
Yeah. And the building where I worked was destroyed. Everyone I worked with was alive, but I didn't know for about 24 hours if everyone I worked with was alive. I had a later shift that day.
Yeah.
So that just, completely made me realize how fragile life is. During that time too, my father developed acute myelogenous leukemia. And he really went through the harsh chemotherapy treatments. He almost died during the first round of treatments. He was unconscious on life support for a month. It was harrowing, and he got through it at first, went into remission for 2 years, but then his leukemia returned, and he sadly ended up dying at a young age in 2002. I also have had a few friends to die, so I'm not trying to make everyone sad, but what I gained a deep understanding early on, right out of college, of how short life can be. So there's really no point in living a life of dreams deferred. I really understand that all of our days are numbered. Those tragic experiences, I think, made me much more strong and brave.
Mm-hmm.
I knew that if I could handle, for example, 2 horrific years of my father's leukemia, subsequent death, that really everything else, every subsequent challenge, I would be strong enough to handle. So, and also just puts things in perspective when like, we don't have unlimited time, so get to it. There's a sense of urgency to do the work you love and lead the life you dream of living. Don't wait, don't hesitate. But, I think going into something like art and painting, it's definitely scary because there's not an absolute path to success doing that, whatever success is defined as. But that, I really think that's true in any job. You might think I'm getting a job, whatever it might be, as a lawyer, as an accountant. In any field, there are challenges. In any field, you might not make it. So I think it makes sense to go after what you love, because if you love it, you'll be all the more motivated to work as hard as possible. It'll be easier to put in those long hours and stay up all night to do the work you need to do.
So with that in mind, so you've gone through this. You've gone through college. You realize that this is going to be your driving passion. What was it like when you were able to basically just kind of set yourself full on this course and just like I am an artist, I am a painter, and get that first piece of work on canvas? What was that like for you?
First piece of work on canvas. Like I mentioned, I've always been making artwork my whole life. So to say the first piece of work, when you mentioned
Well,
that,
I mean, like as a professional, I mean, like as after you've gone through all the steps that you've gone through to kind of harness your skills and get them at the ready.
I really think going through graduate school at Pratt Institute, having my final thesis show, that would be a moment where I had an entire gallery solo show filled with my work that had been really labored over and conceived as a show where I invited a lot of people. I was nervous about it and all of that. I think that would be really the first big painting step. And what a great program it was too. I just can't speak highly enough about Pratt Institute. Very rigorous training. You're challenged on everything you do, so you really have to learn how to articulate your ideas and stand up for yourself, and defend your work. Know why you're doing it, what you're doing, that sort of thing. So I think that program prepares people incredibly well for becoming a practicing artist. And then following that, I was fortunate enough to find some artists who had a studio near where I lived and share some space with them. So I had a space to keep working. That was critical to have the space to work on paintings. I do oil paintings, so I wouldn't really want to work on large oil paintings in my living space. So working in a studio where it doesn't matter if you get paint on the floor, where you have good ventilation, that sort of thing.
Right.
Just having the workspace to keep on going. And also the community of artists and curators I met in graduate school here in New York, that's been invaluable in terms of knowing people who ask me to participate in shows, sort of getting a foot in the door, connecting with the New York art world, that kind of thing. But a lot of it really is just continuing my practice. It's a discipline.
Right.
I love art is work, is something that designer and artist Milton Glaser said. So I don't think it's really waiting around for a flash of inspiration before one can get to work. Working, and you know this from being a writer, working hard, that's the most important action. So just getting to work, like really working, being willing to pull the long hours and the late nights, sacrifice your weekends if you need to.
Right.
Just tenacity, perseverance. And I know it might sound cliche to say, and you hear it a lot, but perseverance, discipline, all of those things really count for a lot. One thing that's pretty sad is a lot of people who have great educations in creative fields like painting, the day they graduate is the day they stop working. So it's almost like if you can just keep working, keep on trucking, George,
Yeah.
keep on working. That's a huge part of it. And I think if you really love the work process itself, that's incredibly helpful. So
And
love of
it's its own
working.
reward. Yeah, it's its own reward,
Yeah,
really.
love of working keeps me working.
Yeah.
I think there's always something new to try or explore. A lot of times a painting for me is about wanting to know what something will look like if I try it. So my main love is not really about the finished product, but the work journey itself, like the Excelsior journey. It's
Yeah.
exciting.
Yeah, exactly. Because I mean, really, just to kind of, bring it all, like home regarding the show, is that Excelsior Journeys, like it's called that because Excelsior itself means onward and upward to greater glory. That means you're in the process of constantly making yourself better, and that's
Right.
really what all of my guests have had. Have had that tenacity to do so, yourself included. So, which is wonderful to hear from. So, and really, I mean, I've definitely had my own stories of my own nights of, working in the office until 5:30. I still remember, working a good 6 hours, getting that last, I want to say like about 50 pages done on part 5 of From Parts Unknown, like getting it all done. It was just an amazing feeling. It was such a rush to do
Yeah.
that.
And
And
then were you exhausted after you finished,
oh
or
yeah. Oh,
okay?
absolutely. There was, and and Cheryl was asleep in the bedroom and everything. There was no way I was going to walk in and wake her up on a Saturday morning. So I just camped out on the couch and just stayed there. But I'm glad I did, because it was, just felt just so relieving more than anything. Just like I finally got that one done. And even though that particular project hasn't exactly burned up any charts,
Mhm.
it's still something that I always loved, because I just wanted to tell that story, no matter how it wound up being, because it had gone through so many different iterations, and it finally got to a spot where I was happy with it. And I can finally say, yes, the story is told the way that I believe it should be told. Now I can
And
go to
I
sleep.
love that point. I love that point that you're making. I think the longer I'm a practicing artist, really, the more I think it's so important to be yourself.
Yeah.
And there's so many criticisms and rejections, but I think it's very important to be yourself and make work that you want to make, work that you believe in. Because if
Yep.
you're making work that's not something you want to explore, that isn't you, that isn't yourself, what's the point?
Right.
Be yourself. What I love about art is there's no right or wrong. You can look
Yeah.
at history. Really, you could do anything, and so that in itself can breed a certain amount of anxiety, because you start with a blank space or a blank canvas, and you're asking yourself this series of questions. Same with a blank page with writing, like
Yeah.
what color should I use? What medium should I use? What words should I start with? So that series of questions is sort of inherently anxious, but in a positive way too. But just this process of making the work, making the choices you want to make, because you'll always face critics, you'll always have rejection. Even the world's most celebrated artists and writers
Oh yeah.
have people who hate them. So that's something
Mhm.
I think, as an emerging artist or writer, dealing with rejection and criticism is something. Having a thick skin helps, and I think the more criticism and rejection that we encounter, the easier it becomes to deal with. Rejection's part of the process.
Oh yeah. Yeah. Just not too long ago, because because Excelsior actually got took part in a BookBub promotion, and BookBub is huge when it comes to getting word about your work out there into the reading world. BookBub is like the loudest possible microphone.
BookBub, I like the name.
Oh yeah, and it wound up actually getting enough buys because my publisher and I, like, we set it up at a 99-cent price range.
Oh, okay.
And it wound up getting enough buys so that way it hit a #1 bestseller spot on both on Amazon US and also 3 #1 spots in Amazon Canada.
Yay!
So I can now call myself an international bestseller.
I say yay. I should say A.
Yeah, there you go. Yeah, exactly. Beauty, eh?
Yeah.
So yeah,
Hey.
so it was. So my French Canadian brothers, like, and sisters, I thank you. But yeah, so it was. But at the same time, because it opened it up to so many new readers, it's also gotten, like, a couple of 1-star reviews. People, that don't know me at all, and just happened to, get this because it was a good deal, and they considered it a waste of time. Like, well, that's their prerogative. But at the same time, a couple of reviews later, somebody dropped a 5-star review saying that it was a good story and a lot of fun. So, like, you can't please everybody. So
Well, there's that saying, isn't it, that if
Lincoln, I think, saying
the only way to not be criticized is to not do anything or not make anything.
Well, there you go. Yeah. It's I think Lincoln said, like, you can't please everyone all the time. And so I just realized, like, like you said, when it comes to criticism, I just haven't been a regular viewer of my Amazon page anymore. It just felt like, yeah, I got those and everything. Yeah, they consider it that. But there are also a lot of people that I know and that I don't know that wound up getting a hold of this book and really enjoying it and wanting to find out what happens next. And so, and a couple of people that have read Ever Upward have really enjoyed that. So that's all I can do. That's all I can do, is just write the stories that I feel work for my characters. And if they work for the general public, great. Obviously I would love it to succeed. And the fact that Excelsior was able to get as many buys to consider it an international bestseller.
Yes.
That's a nice little bonus.
Yes. Did you celebrate? How did you celebrate? I want to hear about this celebration.
Basically it was just a matter of, it was basically just kind of like basking in, that moment just a little bit. It was basically just making sure that I had screenshots of the Amazon pages and the rankings and everything. So yes, they are legit. And these are not lists that I just like created so that I could just sell like a couple of copies and all of a sudden I'm a #1 bestseller, because there are too many people that game the system, which is a reason why there are so many people that will reach those kinds of levels, but are afraid to celebrate it because they're just like, because they don't want to be lumped in with all the people who basically scam the system in order to get those accolades.
And buy out, when you say scam the system, do authors buy out copies of their own book and things like that?
Exactly. Yeah.
Okay.
And that's something that, that people do, like politicians will do.
Oh,
They will buy, their publisher will buy thousands of copies of their book to be given out at different rallies. And so, like all of a sudden, bam, it's like a #1,
New York Times bestseller. Yeah,
exactly. So
that happens in the art world too. Sometimes I think gallerists will bid on an artist they represent's work up at auction and that kind of thing. So I think that's everywhere, but
I make no apologies for hitting those marks, because even though like I was trying to get like a USA Today best-selling list, and it didn't make enough for that, at least it made enough so that I can say that Amazon lists do count for something. And so because of that, I can say international bestseller and call myself an international best-selling author, and I can call myself
international man of mystery.
Well, not quite, because I don't have the teeth for that, but although I may have the glasses, but don't have the crushed velvet suit either. So,
I think you need one. I think crushed velvet coming next.
Think so?
I think you could.
If I can finish, although actually I did wear one I did wear a velvet jacket at PennCon for last year's lip sync contest. Myself and two of my friends, we lip sync Love Shack by the B-52. So I got to beat Fred Schneider and just had a blast. We wound up winning. So that it's a fun little story. But anyway, to get back to you. So so when you say you had your first your thesis, that gallery that finished up your time at Pratt Institute, was there like a set story that went with each of the paintings that, like if you saw them all, they kind of created one thing, or was it all just like, this is, this style, and this is this style, and this is this style? Like, how did you do it?
It certainly was a cohesive group of paintings. I began a formal exploration of color and form at that point, and I've been continuing that exploration for a decade. The work in the thesis show, it was all non-representational, in that I'm not making paintings that have verbally representational content, like this is a landscape or this is a portrait of Burt Reynolds on red velvet.
Right.
My work deals with invented form. So this idea of having a cohesive exploration that's in depth would be what I was dealing with at that point. And I think really exploring form in this way, artists haven't been pursuing it for that long. It's really only been accepted for a little over a century. So to me, there's still a lot to explore in this. So when I talk about exploring color and form, one analogy that I think is great for people to hear if they haven't really looked at many paintings, or they might see a painting that looks abstract or doesn't have recognizable content, and they say, I don't know what it means, I don't get it. This looks like a painting of a triangle. A great analogy is to make an analogy to music. And Kandinsky wrote about this, like 100 years ago, roughly, where basically if you think of music that doesn't have verbal lyrics, so maybe an instrumental piece like classical or jazz music,
right,
that doesn't have verbal content, that musician is exploring rhythm, tones, sounds, composition, feelings, emotions, what have you. It can really be about anything, but it doesn't explicitly have verbal content and lyrics. Whereas, and that would relate to paintings that deal with exploring color and form. Some of the words are even the same between music and a painting, like tone, composition, things, rhythm, visual rhythm, you can have that. And so a painting that has verbal content, like a landscape or a painting of someone, painting of Burt Reynolds, a painting of George Sirois, that you could relate to music that has very explicitly stated verbal content. So if you think of a song that has lyrics, what would be a song that has lyrics that comes to mind to you that everyone would know?
I would throw out Coldplay's Viva La Vida.
Oh, okay. I'm not super familiar with that.
The one, I Used to Rule the World.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
So when you hear that, you know what the song is about. It's explicitly stated in the lyrics. And that would relate more to a painting that has verbally identifiable content. So I think that's a way to help, most people when they hear classical music or jazz or instrumental music, they don't say, I don't get it. What does it mean?
Right.
We're more used to hearing instrumental music, but paintings are really similar in a lot of ways. So, this kind of non-representational exploration of color and form, invented form. I work in a really intuitive way. I start out with drawing in my sketchbook. Drawing and drawing and drawing until my sketches feel right. And then I do a lot of color studies. I paint, typically start painting, thinking about what kind of ground or background I want to paint. So it might be a gradient that goes from magenta to green, or maybe yellow to gray. And then I get really inspired by the color that I see, and start drawing in response to that. And I make very refined, careful studies and drawings, and keep refining and refining, and then end up creating a painting that relates to those studies. So I'm not someone who just goes in and like slapdash, gestural kind of explosion on the canvas. I absolutely do like the process of sketching and planning and creating studies. It's just the way I like to work right now. So I'm open to other kinds of working. My undergraduate degree was in illustration, and I love figure drawing. We actually in undergrad had this rigorous anatomical study, excuse me, rigorous anatomical drawing where we went to the cadaver lab at MCV, and the medical students were showing us how ligaments work. We were studying the skeleton, the organs, everything. So I have to admit, some students were quite squeamish when they saw that. But once you have that kind of rigorous training in anatomy, your figure drawings, your figures, you know what's happening under people's skin. So your drawing doesn't just look like a sack of flesh. It looks like a living being that has muscles and tension to how the limbs move, and organs that are making things happen inside. So I'm really open to getting back to figuration, getting back to verbal or literal content. Something last fall that I got into for fun was Inktober, which is sort of like the NaNoWriMo for writers in a way. Yeah, Inktober, it's just you do an ink drawing, post it online every day in the month of October. That's awesome. Just did it for fun. I just did it for fun because I love drawing. But I got into doing really intuitive ink drawings in my sketchbook. Sometimes I would only have 10 minutes to do it. But I really fell in love with drawing all over again. And so, I've spent this decade doing non-representational work that's a serious exploration of color and form. I'm feeling like that might be the first phase of my artistic development, but I have a feeling that there are going to be some big changes soon, hopefully. So I'm open to experimenting a lot. But I do think it's been valuable to have this serious exploration of color and form for a decade. I think that's a great thing to have done, to really have taken it very seriously for 10 years of painting and showing. So I wouldn't say I have a style at this point, because I'm concerned with making work that is stylistically timeless. Yeah. So I think a lot of times you'll see, when you look at art through history, you'll see art that immediately looks like the trends of the era in which it was made, or looks dated. So you can see something and say, oh, that looks so Rococo because of all the swirling decorative flourishes and the way everyone's dressed in the painting. So that's something I think about a lot. Like, how do you make a painting that is stylistically timeless? And I read that the great logo designer Paul Rand was thinking about that. So the idea that if you want a logo that you design to be functional over a long period of time, he felt that a trademark should be reduced to elementary shapes that are universal, visually unique, but also stylistically timeless. So this idea that elemental forms, so basic shapes, universal forms, can help render work stylistically timeless, that he thought about that. That's something I think about too. For example, the Art Nouveau era. For those of you who study art history and love artwork, Alphonse Mucha would be a great example of an Art Nouveau artist. What was really typical of that era, which was roughly 1890 to 1910, so sort of like 20 years around the turn of the century, one of the main stylistic elements of the Art Nouveau era was this curvilinear line that was applied to everything. So you see a lot of curvilinear, swirling, swooping Art Nouveau hair, or floral vines, or that kind of thing. But this organic curvilinear line that sort of flows all over a composition, that identifies most work as being from the Art Nouveau era, or nowadays sort of mimicking that look, that stylistic sensibility. So one thing, if you look at logos that were designed in that era, once you're keen to the stylistic main visual identifying characteristic that's stylistic for the Art Nouveau era, if you look at the GE logo or the Coca-Cola logo, those were both designed in the Art Nouveau era. So they have that curvilinear line to them. And immediately they look like, hey, they're from the Art Nouveau era. So Coca-Cola's swirling logo, it screams Art Nouveau. So that is something to think about for visual artists. Like, how can you make your work not look too dated? How can it not seem stuck in your era? It's kind of hard to say, might be impossible to do, but it's something I contemplate. So what about with writing? I'm sure that's something with writing too that you have to do.
Man, like, I mean, it's something that wow. I mean, just thinking of like the Coca-Cola logo and the GE logo, it's like, oh, you're right. They really are like from the same era. They were definitely kind of almost like fishing from the same pond in a sense, because they really are so similar. And it's one of those things you don't really think about until you look at them together and just, kind of like hold up a Coke can right next to your microwave and just like, wow.
And with writing too, it's like, I think writing got to be pretty wordy. When I think about like Charles Dickens or Harriet Beecher Stowe, some of those writers were being paid by the word. And so it was getting really wordy. And then, I mean, and I'm no literary historian, but then writers came along like Ernest Hemingway, and they really sort of pared down the work and became a lot more Spartan.
Which is something I'm trying to like get into, because I've realized that, with the books that I've written so far, it seemed like almost like each one was just getting bigger and bigger and bigger. And I don't want to do that, because I don't want to overwhelm my reader with what it is. I think that Excelsior was a perfectly good length, just about, I think it came out to like just over 75,000 words. But the next one, Ever Upward, was about almost 110,000 words.
Whoa.
Yeah. And the finished version of From Parts Unknown, when you take all 5 parts and put them together, came out to over 165,000 words.
Whoa.
And the big reason why I did that, why I broke it up into 5 parts, was because I didn't want to overwhelm the reader. Because I'd gotten to, because it started out as a 232-page book that I self-published through iUniverse in 2002, way back during the time before self-publishing really became a thing.
Well, I want to ask you about that, why you made the decision to do that.
It was pure necessity, really, because I wanted to get this story out, and originally it was a video game proposal, and then it was then I was just like, well, let's see how it is as a treatment for a script. So I wrote that. Let's see how it is as a script, and I wrote 10 drafts of that over the next couple of years, just to get this story out there. I just really believed in this story. I really wanted to get it out there. And when nothing was happening with the script, it actually got an accolade from the New York International Independent Film and Video Festival, which is a smaller festival that's based out of that set up shop at that time in Madison Square Garden. And I was working at Two Penn Plaza, so it was basically just like bring my stuff over to work and then just bring it downstairs to the garden and set up shop once my day at work was done. But basically, like all that, like it wound up. It didn't get like a big award, but they created a category just to give me a certificate, calling it the best futuristic drama of the festival. And pretty much like it's not like that, it was beating down the door for that. It was kind of like the only futuristic drama out of that batch, because everyone else had like all these indie scripts that were trying to sell. And here I am with this, this futuristic action flick that's a cross between Rollerball, Network, The Manchurian Candidate, and No Holds Barred. So it was just like,
whoa. I keep thinking, like, do you think it will be at some point adapted to film or TV?
Netflix. I think it would do really well as a miniseries on the WWE Network. I think that this is my plea to Vince to give it a look, because wrestling itself is treated with utmost respect, and there were elements that were definitely inspired by WWE from the 1990s, and that was it was definitely its own little monster, and I would love to see it as a 5-part miniseries just to see if it would spark some interest in the book.
Oh yeah, I would love to see that. Did you ever watch Monday Night Raw?
Oh yeah,
Yeah.
I've been a watcher for that for years.
Okay, I used to too, because
Yeah.
when I was at VCU, I had 3 roommates, and 3 of us were art majors, but then we had 1 PE major. And
Oh, nice.
yeah, but he watched Monday Night Raw every Monday in the shared living space. And so just because it was on every Monday, normally around the time the rest of us would be eating dinner and in the
Yep.
room, we all started watching it. It was really,
and that was the time to watch it too. That was definitely the time to watch it too, because that's like late 90s. That's when
it was Stone Cold Steve Austin.
Yep, that was the rise of Austin. That was basically like this wonderful era. Like the Monday Night War is just a fantastic era in sports entertainment history. Like that's something that like that I've that was when I was like the biggest watcher then as well, and continued to watch it for quite a few years after that. It's only like in recent years that I kind of fell off, but at the same time I still keep an ear out for what's going on. And definitely it's been a couple of years since I've watched a WrestleMania live, but it's something I always keep like to watch out for and keep myself familiar with. But
I do too, and I think that's a point I love that you're making. I think if you're a creative person, I think it's really important to be open to all aspects of culture.
Yeah.
When something's wildly popular, like wrestling or the Twilight books or anything, I like to just see what it's about and try and think about what is it about this that strikes a nerve with so many people. On the same token, I love to be aware of esoteric, obscure, avant-garde things that aren't necessarily popular in any sense. So I just think just staying open to everything, I think, is something I try to do. I hope to do.
Yeah. Yeah, and that's fantastic. That's something that every artist, whatever their field, should be doing. They it's not so much of like follow what trends are out there. Like you don't want to do that. You don't want to just be a follower. At the same time, you want to just keep an ear out for what it is that's making people respond to things. And if you can somehow make that work in your own field without compromising your own integrity and trying to feel like a sellout, then then by all means go for it. It was actually like just kind of getting back to what you were talking about with Hemingway and all these great smaller books that are out there that really started a whole new trend, like on their own. That's something that I really want to be cognizant of for the next series that I start up after I finish the Excelsior one, because that one I want to, I already know that, I want this one to be a continuing series, not just a trilogy, but, several books in this one, with I know how it's going to end, but I don't want to get to that end right away. There's a whole lot of other stories that I have in mind within that universe, but I want each one to be like about maybe 50 to 60,000 words. And that's it.
Okay.
And I feel like that will be a perfectly good setup. So that way people can kind of binge read a little bit.
Have you ever thought about like jumping into different genres? Because that's something I was just talking about. Like I've spent about a decade working on this exploration of form and color that's been inspired by things like ideas coming from the Bauhaus or Suprematism or emblematic surrealism or graphic design or American quilts, all kinds of things feeding this exploration that I've had for 10 years. But I really am contemplating exploring different directions at this point. Do you ever think about shifting genres, like just like writing a romance or Christian erotica or something like that? Just jumping into a different graphic novel, whatever, just
basically
an example.
Just like they shut the door and then the next chapter starts up. I've given it some thought. I've given it some
Yeah.
thought, mainly, in terms of, say, like screenwriting. I feel
Hmm.
like if I was going to tackle another genre, it would have to be like in screenplay form. I feel like I would be able to get the most out of it by doing that.
Now, I think you and I have something in common. You told me you're thinking about a children's book, and I also
Oh
that's
yeah.
something that I actually completed a children's book that I wrote and illustrated, and it was inspired by the artist Paul Klee, and I got a literary agent for it, and that's where I am right now. So I need to
Fantastic.
get on the phone and see what's happening with that. See where it goes. But then this spring, I'm really seriously working with a deadline that I have to set for myself, like you're setting your deadline
Oh
to
yeah.
do another children's book. So I have the idea. It's top secret right now, but I'll be
Mhm.
writing and illustrating it, a picture book. So
Nice.
that's like the picture books are shorter than ever. Their word count, it's like 800 words
Yeah.
is preferred, and so that's it. It sounds, oh, that's short and quick, but it's actually, for me as a writer, I think it's harder to write something good that's super short in a way.
I know the feeling, and
Yeah.
that's what I'm facing with this other series, and that's what I'm facing with the kids book. I don't want to go into detail regarding the kids book because I'm keeping that one kind of under wraps. Just kind of keeping that one between myself, my wife, and my agents.
Okay, and so with
But
that, you can't even give us a hint, like it's young adult, middle
oh,
reader, picture book,
children. It's a children's book.
for like a picture book.
Yeah,
Oh,
yeah,
okay. Oh, so that's like, we have this in common, where it's how exciting.
yeah,
Picture books for kids, and we're also leading this top secret life, the top secret life of children's books.
yeah, yeah. But
But
it's
no,
fun.
that's one thing you can't really release everything right away.
No, no.
And put it all out there. You sort of have to keep it a little secret until you're ready to go. But
Mhm.
that's exciting. Hey, if
Yeah,
we should have a book signing together event
I would love it.
when they come
I
out,
would
that would
love
be
it.
fun.
Any reason, any excuse to get the two of us in the same room again. And
Yeah,
like I
are you
said,
going
kids
to
book is
illustrate it
incredible.
yourself?
No, no, no.
Why not?
Because my skills are nowhere near. First of all, like I mean, I've seen your work. It's phenomenal. But the kind of work that the kind of sketches that I can do, it's just good enough for, say, like a piece of steno note, like notebook paper. That's pretty much where my skills begin and end.
Well, it's a practice like anything. So I
Oh yeah.
think, I have no doubt, if you really got into attending figure drawing classes and drawing a lot, I have no doubt that you would excel at it.
Oh,
So
it would be interesting. I've never really, haven't really considered it
it
lately.
takes a lot of
But
patience, I think. Just everything. Would you say, do you feel like things are pretty fast and impatient and sort of this soundbite culture in a way lately?
I know I am.
I feel
I
like it
know,
has been sort
and
of that way, but I think, like, to slow down and really carefully do a slow drawing or take a long time to do a painting, I appreciate that. I appreciate that sense of patience and slowness to it.
I've noticed I've definitely noticed that sort of mentality is coming back
Yeah.
because I feel like we kind of hit the wall when it came to, well, the ceiling when it came to digital stuff. It's just like you
Hmm.
really can't go any further than something that doesn't exist, that's in a cloud, that's not tangible. But one of the things that's going on right now that I've taken notice of is that one thing that's selling a lot these days is USB turntables. So it's like,
Oh,
actually, yeah, it's like and vinyl. Like vinyl's
yeah.
made a comeback, and
Analog.
yeah, and yeah, people just kind of realize it's like, hey, wait a second, like maybe let's give this a try. Let's blow the dust off of this field, this medium, and see what happens. Like I wouldn't be shocked if 8-track, like finds its way back in some way. Although, you know, granted, it's one of those things where it's just like just like the line in Armageddon. Max wants you to bring back 8-track tapes. I don't know how that's going to happen. uh, so, um, so one, like with all of that, with that sort of um, with your means of like, trying all these different styles, all these different techniques and everything. Has there been a particular one that really kind of stood out for you? Is this like almost, I don't want to say like you've conquered it, but at least like it's something that you feel like the most comfortable working in?
A certain technique or style?
Yeah.
Really what I've been exploring for the past decade, this commitment to exploring color and form. I use a lot of geometric form in my paintings. Color is a huge thing I pay a lot of attention to. So I think about the idea that chromatic energy is persistent. So this idea of persistent color, if something's a bright color, unless it fades out, that color is going to be a continuous chromatic energy. So yeah, I lately have been drawing forms on a canvas in a very frontal manner, non-overlapping, and I've been letting the color and value, so light to dark, the chromatic energy, create space. So I'm urging color and value toward this perception of the painting having more spatial information than is really present, but then letting the shapes be very flat and on the surface and non-overlapping, inherently frontal. So you have this duality in the painting of flatness. A lot of times the forms acknowledge the edge of the canvas, but then you have a feeling of space. And I love that feeling of space being created only by color and value, like light to dark value, because that's really imagination. It's like something that's very, very flat, but suddenly your brain is perceiving this space, imagined space. To me, that's just magical. It's like an ode to imagination, really, just something that isn't really there, but it is really there too at the same time. So I love that. Did I answer your question? I don't know if I really answered your question exactly.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, I definitely think you did, and that's just a great way to really kind of bring that home. Like just that sort of feeling of just like letting your imagination really flow, and that's a great representation of that. Like when you see that sort of work that you've done, like on the canvas or on the screen or whatever, it's just it's really awesome to see that.
And I love talking about painting something super visual on a podcast. I just love to imagine what people are thinking about as we talk about paintings.
Well, the great thing is, like with a podcast, we can tell them exactly where they can find your work so they can see it for themselves.
Oh, good, so good. But they're better in real life. I have to say, digitally, it's great to see a reproduction, but I love it when someone can see them in real life, because that analog presence of a painting where you can actually see the texture and the brush strokes, all of that, which is, I hope everyone who listens to the podcast is just going to run to a museum or a gallery in the next 10 minutes. Just run, go see some work in person. Living with original art is also a wonderful thing. There's nothing like it to have an original painting in your home. So I always encourage people to support living artists.
Right.
Support us while we're alive.
Yes, absolutely. Yeah. I mean, So with that in mind, you were saying before, just to, get out there and see a gallery and everything. When I was reading your bio, I read two words that just completely blew my mind: Lincoln Center, because that's where I graduated from college. That's where we had graduation. And so just being there and, and having experienced Lincoln Center and its majesty, because it really is a really majestic area right at this little spot, like right in New York City. You can just see, just dripping with culture,
it's like this cultural magnet energy being exuded.
Right. And having seen like two operas, over there, going
what did you see?
I saw, I took this wonderful class called Exploring the Performing Arts when I was both a sophomore and a senior in college. They let me take it twice. And the first time that I took it, and I love sharing this story. First time that I took it, it was the second semester of my sophomore year. So this is going from February to May of 1996. And the first show on our schedule to see was this show that seemed to be gaining some traction down at the New York Theater Workshop. It was getting some buzz because the creator had just died a couple of weeks ago.
Oh, no.
and it was Jonathan Larson. The
Oh,
show was Rent. And
wow.
so I can always say I saw Rent before it was cool because I got to see it during the previews at the New York Theater Workshop, sitting in the second row, watching this amazing show just unfold in front of me.
Wow. Wow.
And I was taking it for class. Like it was,
Wow.
like it was an amazing feeling. And they made sure to add an opera to that. So we saw Romeo and Juliet at the Metropolitan Opera House. And then the second time I took it, my senior year, we went to the New York City Opera House, which is obviously not as majestic as the Met, but it's still, very nice. And they have, instead of having the lyrics right in front of you, like on the seat that's right in front of you on this little LED screen, what the New York City Opera House has is the lyrics on a screen right above the stage. And so that's how I got to see Macbeth.
Oh, wow.
Verdi's Macbeth. So and just seeing, and I still remember hearing the finale, Vittorio, that just had me just like, I need to own this. The rest of it I was really taken by, but man, Vittorio just absolutely blew me away.
Whoa.
So
one time I saw an opera of Lost Highway, the David Lynch film.
Oh, cool.
They made an opera out of it. So my cousin and I went to see it. It was amazing. I'm envisioning an opera version of Excelsior Journey right now.
That would be nice.
Amazing.
We'll start with the film first, and then we'll work our way up, to becoming that sort of cultural touchstone. That would be.
Yeah, but I do think it's so important for creative people to have a lot of great input. So going to operas, reading a lot of books, going to galleries and shows, really anything that you can take in, even if it's Monday Night Raw. So just taking in, So emphasizing that. Well, Lincoln Center. Let me tell you about that. I've volunteered as an artist for the Sing for Hope, New York City Sing for Hope Public Pianos program. And so I came up with an idea for a piano. It needed to be family friendly. It was going to be a piano that was placed outdoors in Manhattan. And so I designed a piano that I named Octavia Upright, and basically flat geometric forms and bright colors, but I let the piano keys be the teeth on a mouth, and then I painted eyes and a nose. So it really was this friendly, playful piano that kids could enjoy, sort of like something you might see on Pee Wee Herman, something like that, Pee Wee's Playhouse. And then it was placed outdoors in Manhattan in Hudson River Park in Chelsea for 2 weeks, which was great fun. And so I actually got musician friends to come and play in public. One night, a musician friend named William Wade, he was this brilliant pianist, came and he brought some of his Broadway singer friends. They were all singing in the park as the sun set. It was just magical. And then at the end of all of that, all of the pianos were brought to Josie Robertson Plaza at Lincoln Center. So it was, you can imagine it was 88 pianos out in the plaza at Lincoln Center, and 88 pianists came and played them all at once. It was truly one of those moments in life where, like, I can't believe this. This is so magical. So that I feel really fortunate to have had that opportunity to do that. With showing, I'm pretty relentless in just submitting my work to juried shows. And in the past decade, I've been lucky to have had 5 solo shows of new work, plus been in 70 group shows, most of them juried or curated. So I've been working hard, but those numbers really also reflect regularly getting plenty of rejection. So it's like for every 100 or 10,000 things that works out, for every one thing that works out, I'll have 100 rejections, for example. So it's just plugging away, keeping at it, persisting.
Which is what so many people need to remember to do with their own art. It's there's the other side of me, which is also voice acting, and with that, there are these pay to play websites like voices.com or voice123.com.
Mm-hmm.
And basically, like, you pay a monthly fee in order to get access to all these different things, that all these different people that are asking for auditions for all these smaller projects.
Mm-hmm.
And you have to keep plugging away, because you're likely going to get like about 30 or so like rejections before you get one job. And that's simply because as soon as that thing goes out, then you got hundreds of other people that are watching the screen just as much as you are, getting their audition recorded, sampled, and sent out, like right away, so that way they'll have it within, 5-10 minutes. And then that person has to go through it all and decide which one is going to be their big hit, and they're not going to get to them all,
George, can you do, I'm dying to hear your craziest voice. Can you do like fake accents? I have to hear it.
Oh boy.
I'm putting you on the spot.
Apparently you are, yeah.
I want to hear your funniest voice or wildest voiceover voice.
Oh man. Well, really just there's so many different ways that I've been going about, like kind of honing my style, and that's another reason why I want to redo Excelsior, because I felt like I had kind of like gone a little. It hadn't quite gotten the hang of what I really wanted to do when it came to voiceover. So, but at the same, at the same time, I would one of the things that I got to do for Clayton Studios when I recorded my demo there, because that's where I took my voice lessons. They were asking for different presidential hopeful types of voices and everything, and the one that I was able to really come up with was Bernie Sanders. That was the one that I was able to really kind of hold on to. But the impression that I always that I really hold on to and just say, like, yes, I will take pride in the fact that I can do a damn good William Hickey. That's who was Uncle Lewis from Christmas Vacation.
Oh,
so, like, the older one. Just the
one with the toupee.
Yeah, the one who told Bethany.
Toupee's on fire.
Exactly, the one who told Bethany, you couldn't hear a dump truck driving through a nitroglycerin plant.
You nailed it. That's him.
That's something that I'll hold on to. You
better check to make sure your hair isn't on fire.
Right. Exactly.
That's great. I need to hear more of those.
I have the demos, both of them on he'sgotit.com. So. Well,
no, we're talking about some great performances we've seen, and I want to tell you about one that I saw.
Yeah.
And I'd love to hear like what really sticks with you.
Mm-hmm.
When we were in high school,
yeah.
I had an opportunity to attend the Governor's School Program for the Arts in the summer. It was like a month-long program where you stayed at the University of Richmond and were just immersed in the arts. I was immersed in the visual arts program. But we also would go sort of like summer camp for art nerds, basically.
Nice.
But we got to go to a lot of performances, and the one that really just stuck with me, and this would be, 1994, I think. We went to Belle Isle, which is an island on the James River in Richmond, Virginia. I know you know Belle Isle, but it's this island in the middle of the river, and you walk over a pedestrian bridge, and it was summer. I think it was August. So August in Richmond, it's a southern city. You can imagine the trees were dark green. And by the way, in the summer down south, a lot of times you get a thunderstorm in late afternoons and evenings, sometimes every day in the summer. So Belle Isle has this big white tent as the stage. And people bring chairs or blankets to sit on. And we were there. And the performer was Dave Brubeck and his band.
Oh, wow.
And Dave Brubeck, jazz master, piano great, he was wearing a white tuxedo, and all the guys in his band had on white tuxedos, and you had this he had a big white grand piano that he was playing, and the tent is this big white tent, so you can imagine this scene. It was kind of getting to be evening. The sky was pink, the trees were dark green. Belle Isle is near a train track too, I should add, and they were playing, so a lot of their jazz favorites, just playing along, Take Five, things like that.
Mm-hmm.
But then suddenly a train goes by, and these jazz masters start playing to the sound of the train.
Oh, that's cool.
It just blew my mind. But then we start to get thunder and lightning too. It wasn't raining yet.
Yeah.
And these guys, they just start reacting to the thunder. You hear thunder and they play along to that. Lightning flashes and they like make sounds that go with that. And I really felt like I'm never going to see artwork this amazing again, this in the moment. These musicians who are truly masters of their craft. They've been playing for decades and decades and are just so natural and intuitive and so in the moment, just reacting to the world, that being present, being in the present moment, just mind-blowing. So that's a performance I would say sticks with me in a big way. A friend of mine was talking about how a lot of times people spend time ruminating about the past or anticipating the future. So we have all this ruminating and all this worrying. But sometimes the best place to be is just in the moment, just in the present moment.
Yeah, absolutely.
And I think that happens when you're in a painting or when you're in the story you're writing. You're right there in that moment in the work.
Yeah, really, because you have to come up with whatever is, like you may have like a completed picture in mind. You may have a great, the perfect ending for your book, like in mind. Mm-hmm. But you have to get there first. Because you're going to find out that journey is going to have a lot more twists and turns than you originally thought. And I always say that I've said this in different speaking engagements that I've done. Because people always, people ask, like what changed from the original ideas that you had with your writing. And I always go back to one specific scene, because I always pictured from high school on, when I was, first come up with the character Excelsior, I always pictured this grandiose moment where he finally gets his armor and he's slowly putting it on. And it's almost like it's actually kind of inspired by the shots in Heavy Metal when Tarna is putting on her uniform and getting ready for battle right during the whole last segment there. All these these sweeping shots and everything, and even almost like the Jerry Goldsmith score from Star Trek: The Motion Picture, just very very much like a huge moment to really kind of drink in. And in the finished book, that moment is Matthew in a bathroom putting on the armor with this fuzzy toilet seat cover, like on there. And it's just like, it's so like not even like, I don't even want to call it basic. It's just so like, but like that was the reason why I did it. Because I didn't want it to be like this big grandiose moment. It just
melodramatic and grandiose.
It fit perfectly to have it happen in this bathroom with that fuzzy toilet seat cover, and like just putting it on.
Personal and
and having that moment where he like looks at himself in the mirror with the helmet on, and he says, "I am Excelsior," and then takes the helmet off and just says, "I am Excelsior."
It's so poignant, George.
Yeah.
It's really poignant.
Yeah. But speaking of amazing moments, for me, it was just like in 2006, Cheryl and I got to take another trip over to Lincoln Center, and that was because there was a concert that John Williams was conducting.
Oh, wow.
And it was a combination of his music and the music in Act 1, the music of Bernard Herrmann. Mm-hmm. And so the whole segment for Bernard Herrmann was hosted by Martin Scorsese. So he's coming out and he's telling stories about all these different moments in Bernard Herrmann's history. and then getting to the last part where he was talking about working with him on Taxi Driver.
Wow.
And how Bernard Herrmann had these 3 notes right at the very end when Travis is looking at himself in the rearview mirror before he goes off on his shift, and those 3 notes didn't sound right to Martin, and so he brought it up to Bernard, and Bernard simply said right before he left at the end of the day, he said, "Play it backwards," and then he went home and died. Like it was, yeah. So you have to do what he says, right? There, you're not gonna just, say like, well, he's not here for it, but he did it. He played it backwards, and for him, that moment worked. And then the second half of the concert was hosted by Steven Spielberg.
Wow.
And, it was an amazing moment.
Oh, I love Steven Spielberg.
Yeah, and so the first part of that act, after the intro, because he introed it with the opening from Jaws, which was amazing. But then he did a suite from Close Encounters of the Third Kind, and right at the end of that, I realized I was getting choked up, and I also knew that he was going to do E.T. later on. And I was just like, okay, if I'm getting choked up at Close Encounters, I'm going to be a mess when he gets to and sure enough, not only did he do E.T., but he had a screen going on playing out the final 15 minutes of E.T.
Oh, wow.
With the orchestra, conducting, with the orchestra performing the score, with John Williams conducting, with Steven Spielberg introducing it. And so right when it shows the spaceship landing and he's got to say, and everyone's saying goodbye to him, I am a mess. I am an absolute bawling.
You probably weren't the only one, though.
I wasn't, because you can hear a chorus of people going once it was all finished. So you want to talk about mind-blowing concerts and what great art can do. Like that is right there.
Yeah.
When you were talking about how music can do all these different things, like when it's an instrumental piece of like classical music or whatever, when Williams was doing E.T., normally he has a projector on to kind of show what's going on, so that way he can kind of keep pace with the scene, with the music. But for E.T., he had them turn off the projector, and he just did it. And Spielberg actually went back and re-edited that finale to coincide with Williams' music instead of the other way around. And so it wound up being no coincidence that was what got Williams his 4th Oscar. So so that's one of those things where where the art itself can inspire others to do other things. And so so hearing what you did over at Lincoln Center, that's so amazing. The fact that you were able to share that area, with those kinds I
know, just the energy there. Yeah, it's just it just was really a real thrill to be able to do that. And I made so many nice friends. The pianists who came to play, the other piano artists, just was a joy to participate in that. I think collaborative projects are a great thing for artists and writers to get into, because sometimes just working alone in the studio or at your desk can be too isolating. So I love collaboration. I've had a chance to collaborate a number of times, collaborate actually on the work itself. So I got to do a collaborative artist book project with artists in Copenhagen, Mexico City, Berlin, London, New York, and Rio de Janeiro. It was writing and photography, and we were each covering markets around the world. And so I covered the Brooklyn flea market, took a lot of photos and wrote about it. But also collaboration, I think, with group shows. So recently I just finished, and I think I told you how busy it's been, just finished having a big group show over at Pratt Institute of paintings with 2 artists, Robert Costello and Andy Jemison. Mm-hmm. We co-curated the show, and we're just excited to do it. They're friends of mine, but I also went through graduate school with them. And So I've known them about a decade, and it just was a joy to do a collaboration on a big group show of paintings. We had more than 30 paintings in the show, and great. Pratt Institute gave us or allowed us use of 2 large galleries on campus, so that was a thrill too. So I think what's nice about writing or doing paintings is that we can do the work on our own. So in other words, we can wake up any day and do work. Nothing can stop you from writing a few paragraphs in the morning before you go to work, or me sketching, whatever. But then there's so many ways that once it's out there, you can collaborate and connect with people and get into that. So just the practice, developing your practice, getting connected to other people, I think is a big part of it. You're great about connecting with people, doing things like the podcast, social media, things like that.
Oh, thank you. And I hope to keep on doing that. So, so with that in mind, would that be something that you would say would be a tip to aspiring artists that are trying to kind of like follow in your footsteps?
Oh yeah, I think absolutely. Consider collaboration. Oh, and I love when you ask me about like aspiring artists, young artists. Favorite question of the day. Yeah, I think being open-minded, collaborating, connecting with people. I think there's so much to say to aspiring artists. I think getting a great education is something I advocate. I think my education at VCU, Virginia Commonwealth University, and Pratt Institute, that education has been invaluable. But I think in terms of connecting with people, it's great to read and study history, including biographies of artists, but I also think cultivating positive and encouraging friendships, relationships with people who are enthusiastic, that really makes a difference. I think, it's, if you look at history, it's rare to find a history maker who was incredibly cynical and lacking in enthusiasm. So even if the work is cynical, most history makers still have this fundamental enthusiasm about doing their work, sort of excitedly pouring their energy into it. There's a helpful tip from Milton Glaser. I mentioned him earlier in that he mentioned that art is work. Another thing I want to mention that he said or he wrote, and by the way, everyone knows Milton Glaser. He designed the I Love New York t-shirt or design. He's known for designing all kinds of things that you've seen. He wrote an essay called 10 Things I Have Learned. And in that essay, he talks about how some people are toxic and should be avoided. So he really basically says, pay attention to the effect other people have upon yourself or upon you. So it's, I think, important for young people to pay attention to, for example, if a friend is constantly negative, constantly putting down your enthusiasms, putting down your dreams, or if you feel drained all the time after you hang around that person, it's worth considering if it's like a toxic relationship. On the other hand, it can work the other way. If you always feel energized or motivated or excited after being around someone or working with them, that's the opposite. It's a really positive, encouraging relationship. So yeah, collaboration, connecting with other artists, building a support system, that all would be really, really critical for young artists. In addition to, of course, focusing on developing one's work.
Right.
I think developing one's work is really the most important thing. And I think developing one's work rather than fixating on commercialism or selling, because a lot of times work that's commercially popular is not what is intellectually groundbreaking or maybe innovative or experimental.
And it's also not timeless.
Because it could just be a trend.
Trends come and go, and like if you're just doing something just because it's good for that particular period of time, then it's only going to stay in that particular period of time. It's not going
absolutely
to
yeah. And it could convolute a young artist's development if he or she's making work with this real strong concern about commercial success, right? Or worrying about like how many followers on social media you have or how many likes your work receives, because I think it's important to keep in mind that a lot of innovators weren't popular when they were getting started or even understood at first. So I think being yourself, making work you want to make and believe in, exploring things you truly want to explore. I think it's helpful to know that there's not a right or wrong to art. I think that's what makes it wonderful and at the same measure terrifying. The possibilities are endless. I see like people get into being jealous of friends' successes. I think jealousy is not a good way to spend your time and energy. I really think there's room for everyone. I think it's a lot more fun to feel excited and genuinely happy when a fellow artist has success or achieves recognition. And really, if you keep working, there will be room for you. So just this idea that there is room for everyone's work. And then I think realizing we don't have unlimited days. I said it earlier, all of our days are numbered. So, make work now, do it now.
Absolutely.
I also want to say, I think it's important for artists to not limit themselves to one artistic canon. So I keep mentioning, explore input from a lot of sources, explore beyond the art history books, take it all in, recharge your creative batteries with excellent input. And I think everyone gets down or unmotivated because we're on this path where we're working, and say you have 3 months where you get continuous rejection from everything, like a rejection letter a day. It's hard not to feel down or unmotivated. I think first, taking good care of oneself, it helps to acknowledge if you're really exhausted. Sometimes you do need a break, or you need to just get more sleep or eat healthier food, drink more water. That kind of just basic taking care of oneself can be pretty fundamental. And then for young people, knowing, and it's, I have to remind myself of this too, knowing that we really have the power within us to direct our emotional response to things toward more positive thinking. So, sometimes it can be a choice to really like ruminate in negativity, or the antithesis is true, that being happy can be a choice. So, but I'm saying all of this, but I think a really critical thing for young people and everyone is to try to maintain a sense of humor, especially about oneself.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
That's such, great advice. And it's something that I really hope that all of my listeners really kind of take to heart, like when it comes to everything that they're working on. Now,
and not take oneself too seriously, like avoid conceit.
Yeah. So where can our listeners find you?
Well, right now I'm sitting at a chair in Brooklyn, but I'm just sort of cutting up. No, on Twitter and Instagram, I have two handles. One is at Elizabeth Meggs. That's ELIZABETHMEGGS. Also at Meigs Paintings, which is at MEGGSPAINTINGS. And then my website is www.elizabethmeggs.com. And that's my name, ELIZABETHMEGGS.com. I'm getting ready to revamp my website. As you know, like the web presence is always a thing artists and writers have to think about and redo and rework. So I'm excited. I'm reworking the website. If they see it now, they'll see not my latest work, but if they come back in a couple of months or a month or so, they'll see brand spanking new stuff.
Awesome.
Yeah.
That sounds fantastic. And all right, folks, I can't stress just how inspired, I've been just talking with Elizabeth, and I really, really hope that all of you are just as much. This has been just a terrific conversation, that I've had with an old friend, and I hope that she is now your new friend.
I hope so too. And I've had a wonderful time talking to you. Who would have known? You know, we're in drama class together with our wonderful teacher, Mr. Damron, whom we both love and really give a lot of credit to. And who would have thought all these years later that we would be talking about your books, my paintings? It's so exciting. It really is. It really is an Excelsior journey. So onward and upward.
for all of us, yes. And so I can't thank you enough for being on the show. I can't thank all of you listeners enough for taking the time to listen to this show, to previous shows, and hopefully to future shows, because we got a whole lot more people that are on this ever increasing queue of people that want to be a part of this show, want to be a guest on it, want to share their journey with all of you. So I really hope you're all listening. I thank you all for listening to this episode. And for Elizabeth Meggs, this is George Sirois saying to all of you, ever upward. And we'll see you next week.